What started as a career in coursing would turn into a very successful racing career. Join us for a fantastic conversation with Kim Gooding, trainer of the 1989 Waterloo Cup winner, React Fagan, coming up next on Greyhound Nation. This is Greyhound Nation, episode 40, recorded October 15th, 2023. Kim Gooding, from coursing to racing. Greyhound Nation is a podcast for Greyhound enthusiasts produced by Greyhound enthusiasts. To learn more about our show and its hosts, visit our website at greyhoundnation.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Greyhound Nation podcast. I'm Michael Burns, and now here's your host, John Parker.
Welcome back, Greyhound lovers. Our guest today, coming to us from Lincolnshire in England, is owner, trainer, breeder Kim Gooding. Welcome, Kim.
Good evening.
We're really glad to have you. We're going to talk a little bit about your record in greyhounds and the transition you made from being a coursing trainer to being a racing trainer. Let's go back to the very beginning and tell us a little bit about how you got started in greyhounds.
I think really my interest in long dogs was probably when I used to go to the local stables, and she had a lurcher, and this old lurcher, whenever we rode out, used to come with us, and any opportunity that she could course a hare, she was gone. And being as kids, it was like, oh, where's that damn dog, and it was always a nuisance, but she always came back. And I think that was my sort of introduction to long dogs. I left home at 16 and I went to work with horses, and I was at a certain place for about 18 months, and I moved to another yard, and I wanted a lurcher, and somebody, a friend who worked at the hunt kennels, turned up with a van full of greyhounds, and they were retired greyhounds, but they needed homes. I felt desperately sorry for one of them because he was very nervous, and nobody was going to want him, so I kind of took him on. Anyway, he sort of just was my pet. And then I got another one, and then I started going to sort of lurcher shows and just doing lure racing with them. And then I sort of heard about coursing, so I had a couple of ex-track dogs which weren't quite good enough on the track, and so I started coursing at the Colchester Coursing Club, which was all walked up, but great fun.
Explain that for our listeners that aren't familiar with the two different types of coursing, how walked up coursing works.
Okay, so basically you're on open countryside, and a line of people will walk in a line across the fields to put the hares up. And it's the same principle that the hare still has to be at least 100 yards away before the dogs are slipped. Obviously, the slipper has to be quite skilled in a walked up meeting because the hares aren't channeled through like they would be on a driven meeting. So, they have to be quite on the ball because obviously the hare can run in any direction. So it's a bit harder work for the slipper, really, to be fair.
So the gallery serves as basically like the beaters would in driven coursing.
Yeah, and also, the dogs themselves were having to walk as well with you. So, it was a long day for them as well. But I mean, obviously, we took, water and things in backpacks and what have we. The cars were never, or vans were never too far away, because obviously we were sort of moving from one location to another. But on the whole, everybody is walking.
So these first two former racers that you had, how did they do at coursing?
They were okay. I won a couple of stakes with them. Colchester, I mean, it was with the coursing clubs over here, you kind of had sort of the lower down ones and then the better coursing clubs. So the walked up meetings were more not so professional, still run by the National Coursing Club, but not as professional as with, you probably got ex-track dogs rather than coursing dogs. So it's probably more one man and his dog rather than, trainers as such. So,
how long did you do the walked up before you went to your first driven coursing meeting with beaters?
I think probably because probably Ely Club was the next club that we went to, which they sort of had both. You could do a bit of walked up and a bit of driven there. So that was a little bit depending on what land they were on. So that was sort of a next step up, so to speak. And then...
Were you doing any racing during this time?
No.
Or was it all coursing?
All coursing at that time, yeah. All coursing. Yeah.
And how long did you do that before the famous year 1989, which we're going to get to just in a minute? How long had you been coursing when 1989 rolled around?
Probably from about 85. Really. And then I met Russell at Colchester Coursing Club, and we kind of both thought, well, it would be quite nice to have a proper dog. So that's how Fagan came along, really.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Fagan. You and Russell, who was at that time your, I guess, fiance or significant other before you got married, you're covered in Charlie Blanning's book, 22 Waterloo Cups, in the 1989 chapter, which is entitled A Couple of Kids. So on that theme, tell us a little bit about how you you got the now famous Greyhound React Fagan.
Well, he was owned by a friend of ours, and he won a stake at East of England, and Russell approached him about buying the dog. So we didn't have enough money to buy him. I think it was about 800 quid or something. I can't remember. And so my mother-in-law lent us the money, and Russell bought him. And then we got a nomination for the Waterloo.
How did that come about, the nomination?
Well, the nominations are given to dogs that, unless you have a nomination yourself, the nominations then, if a nominator doesn't have a dog to run that year, then they are returned, and then the nominations get given out to dogs that have really sort of had to qualify to show that they're worthy of running in the Waterloo. So we didn't really get into the last minute, so we were quite lucky to get in. So...
Was 1989 your first Waterloo Cup that you'd ever even attended?
I've never been, no. Hadn't been.
That's pretty good to win on your first trip to the Waterloo Cup.
I thought it was really easy.
Now, who was the trainer and who was the owner of Fagan? Who was on paper, so to speak, or on the official records of the Waterloo Cup committee? Who was considered the owner and who was considered the trainer?
Russell was the owner, and I think I can't remember if Russell was down as the trainer or not, but we trained him together, and we were just sort of muddled along.
What did you do to get Fagan ready for the Waterloo Cup? Were you training him just in case you got a nomination, or did you just run him in normal coursing meetings? What was his regimen?
No, we kind of knew that he was a good chance that he may get a nomination, so we were aiming for that. Obviously, he had been run, so it wasn't as if he wasn't totally unfit. But he'd been in Ireland, and the Irish dogs aren't as fit. The park coursing dogs aren't as fit as our dogs needed to be over here, because we're asking a lot more of them with open coursing than we are with park coursing. So, we did a lot of, Russell would come home at lunchtime and take him around the block, trotting along with the bike, and then we'd take him to a playing field and gallop him there. Yeah, it was all sort of done in between our jobs.
Yeah. Describe Fagan for us in terms of his physical characteristics. He was a rather substantial greyhound, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was a big lump of a dog. Yeah, he certainly was. But like most coursing dogs, a fabulous nature. That's one of my big things, that with the difference between the racing bred dogs and the coursing dogs. The coursing dogs are so much more laid back. Yeah.
Do you think that's a genetic thing, or is it because of the way they're reared and trained?
I think it's a genetic thing. I think it is a genetic thing, because the breeding is different, and they're definitely. I mean, I always think, well, a racing dog has got to be crazy to chase a orange hare in a circle. Whereas at least the coursing dogs were, chasing what they are meant to chase.
Yeah, yeah. So Charlie records in his book, 22 Water Trips, that Fagan weighed 96 pounds. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
I know that unlike racers, their weight is not recorded in the in the records or the cards, that sort of thing. But 96 is big even for a coursing dog, isn't it?
Yeah, he was a big lump of a dog, but a lovely natured dog, so laid back, just
yeah. Didn't leave his course in the paddock and get all excited too much before his course was called up.
He was amazing like that. But then I think a lot of the coursing dogs, to be fair, just had that nature. They never seemed to. Not many ran their courses before their turn. They were very different.
Well, tell us a little bit about the story about how you and Russell did to go to the field and have accommodations and a place to keep Fagan overnight and so forth. Tell us that story.
Well, of course, we didn't have a clue what and how everybody, went about this. So we knew that we had to plan to go there for obviously the 3 days and get there the day before or on the day, and think about at least 2 nights. So we thought, well, we'll just get a caravan. So we rented this caravan and had no idea where we were going to park it or anything. And we sort of got up to Allcar and we were driving about, and we thought, well, we'll just nip in this farm that was just literally at the top of the road that leads to the Withens. And we rocked up into their drive and we just knocked on the door and said, would you mind if we just parked here for a couple of days? and they were so welcoming. They said, yes, that's fine. And so Fagan really had his kennel in the van, and we were in our caravan. So, yeah, it was fine.
Were these coursing people that allowed you to stay on their land? They were
No,
just
not
local folks
really.
there in the village?
They, they were just local, and obviously they were literally at the end of the road on the Withens, so they knew all about the Waterloo and very familiar with it. And I'm guessing probably some of it maybe was his land that we went on. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, they were certainly familiar with the Waterloo. Yeah.
And then did you drive the caravan onto the grounds, the coursing grounds, or did you unhook it and just you and Russell and Fagan went in your van to the field?
No, we left the caravan where it was because we thought if it got muddy, it would still be there now, I think. We decided we'd leave that there and just van us and dog on the field.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the first couple of courses that Fagan ran. Do you remember them well?
Yeah, I mean, well, I remember them. I'm not sure if I remember them well, but yeah, I mean, we knew that we were meeting, obviously, who we were meeting in the first round, which was Richard Davis's dog. So yeah, he went up the field and he won that course, and we were like, wow, well, at least we're still in.
And for those of our listeners and viewers that don't know, I'll just remind you that the Waterloo Cup is a 3-day, 64 Greyhound event. And to advance, a Greyhound has to keep winning, has to win one course after another. And so obviously, Fagan continued to do that. What did you and Russell think as he continued to roll up one victory after another? How did it feel?
Well, it was just it was like a fairy tale, really, because it just kept happening. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And obviously you have 2 courses each day, so, and then we knew that I can't think if that was the final morning or the second day when we met Brian Diverley, and we knew that was going to be a tough one. But he did what he had to do.
What was your regimen for Fagan between courses? Who attended to him? Was that you or Russell or both of you?
I did, because Russell was easily led by the Irish. Well, he was by the last day. Was in no fit state to attend to anything, never mind the dog.
Now, describe your regimen when Fagan would come off the course. What would you do for him in terms of, cleaning him up, rubbing him down, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we did. Well,
obviously,
washing their feet off straight away to make sure there's no cuts or injuries to the feet or pads or whatever, which you were very unlucky to get those type of injuries on the Withens, because obviously the going was fabulous there. And then rub the dog down, and then rug him up, make sure he's warm, and into the van just to rest. And then you let them rest and just cool down, and then you'd probably get them out a bit later for a leg stretch and empty out, and just trying to obviously you have to keep an eye on what's going on to sort of gauge when your next run will be.
Did you have your own secret embrocation or liniment that you rubbed him down with?
No.
Charlie Glanning likes to talk about the smelly embrocations that each trainer would have as their own secret formula, that sort of thing.
No, I think it was probably just Carrayco that everyone else used. It was nothing special.
Yeah, yeah. And what about snacking between courses? Did he have a snack, something to eat
No,
between courses?
we didn't do that in those days.
Yeah.
And probably, um, you know, you learn things as you go along, that possibly, like now, for instance, we would give our race dogs a pre-race meal, whereas we didn't do that with the coursing dogs. And I often think that, maybe back then there was things possibly we could have done a bit more then.
Yeah. Charlie writes often of dogs being purchased if they won succeeding courses, that the owner would get approached by other coursing people there on the field and offer to buy the dog, if not before the end of the Waterloo Cup, right after. Did you get any offers while Fagan was racking up those wins?
I don't think we did. I don't remember. We wouldn't have parted with him for the world. I know that. Absolutely not.
And were you watching, the bookmakers are there on the field, and as the dog continues to win and goes through the various brackets, the odds increase or decrease, and they become more favored. Were you watching what the bookmakers were doing at all, or were you too busy with Fagan to do that?
Oh, we were way too busy with the dog, I think, and just living the dream.
So you get to the semifinals, and what did you think at that point with Fagan being in the last 8 dogs, or last 4 dogs, excuse me?
Well, it was surreal, I think, really. We knew we were there, and I think even at that stage we didn't sort of think, we literally took each course as it came. And, I think, and until it was won, we didn't, it just was like, oh my God, we've done this. Or he's done this.
And then he wins the semifinal round and gets to the finals. And how was he doing at that point? Did he seem like he had some time on the clock, or was he pretty fresh? Or what was he like going to slips for the final?
I can't remember the times, to be honest, but he was just so well in himself between each course. He just didn't give us any causes of concern at all. He was never a dog to be bouncing around or anything like that. He's just a very chilled dog.
Yeah,
he was a star.
So he jumps out of the van for the final. He seems pretty fresh. He's ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then they have that famous parade up the Withens with the owners and the trainers, and always 2 policemen flanking the whole crowd. What was that like to walk up the field there in front of the entire gallery in the formal parade to the slips?
I don't think I did. I don't think I did that bit. I think I was up the other end getting ready to catch him.
Yeah.
Because that was always sort of priority. I mean, even though it was obviously the last course, to get the dog as quick as possible. So I think I was hiding up the other end somewhere.
Who was the judge in 1989? Do you remember? Was it
Ron
Ronnie
Mills?
Mills or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. Yeah.
So you're up there. You're up there to catch. You can see the. I guess it was Gary Kelly was slipping.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And you're up there on the field. Your dog's in slips for the final of the Waterloo Cup. How nervous were you?
Oh God. I mean, it was, we were terrified. Well, it was sort of like that sort of, that anticipation of, this is the Waterloo Cup, which for us was massive. yeah, and when that flag came up, oh, wow.
Do you remember the course?
No.
Did he win it straight away, or was there a lot of turns of the hare?
I think he won it pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Mills, the judge, pulls the flag. What collar was he wearing? Was Fagan wearing? White or red? I'm going to test your memory here.
I think it was red. Was it?
Yeah. So what did you do when he pulled the flag for Fagan?
Well, we obviously the main concern was to grab the dog, and I got him, and then Russell was there, and then we just stood there hugging him at the end of the withing, not quite believing what had just happened. I think we both just burst out crying.
Yeah, that's pretty. I wonder if that's ever been done. If it's the first time not only the dog ran in the Waterloo Cup, but it was the first time the owner and trainer had been there, that they had went through and won. That's as we say in the States here, it's a Cinderella story.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So you have the fun of marching with Fagan walking back down the field toward the awards area where they were going to have the ceremony. That had to be a thrill.
It was, yeah, but we were sort of all a little bit sort of, well, not shy, that's not the word, but we just were like, oh my God. But of course it was amazing, to be presented with that trophy that everyone in Corsie wanted to win.
Yeah. And of course, Fagan had no idea. He just knew he had fun and gotten to chase the hare 6 times.
Yeah, he just wanted his dinner by then.
And of course, everybody, at least in my experience, either before or after the awards, everybody wants to touch the Waterloo Cup winner for luck. How did he respond to everybody crowding around him and wanting to, pet him and so forth?
He didn't care at all. He was just so not bothered about what was going on, and he just was like, whatever. He had no idea the importance of the occasion.
Yeah. So there's some great pictures in 22 Waterloo Cups. Charlie has been kind enough to send me those off his computer, and we'll probably include some of those with our show notes. But there's you and Russell has the famous Waterloo Cup chain on with the winners of with the names of all the previous winners on it. What was that like to stand there and be given the cup and so forth, and have the chain draped over Russell's neck and that?
It was amazing. I mean, he was speechless. He couldn't speak. It was amazing. But actually, I've since looked at the chain properly, not so long ago. And actually, they spelt Fagan's name wrong on it.
Oh my! How did they spell it, and what was the proper spelling?
I think it's actually Fagan, and I'm sure on the chain it's En.
And then Fagan in Oliver Twist was Fagin, as I recall.
No, I think it was In. I think it's In on the chain. Sorry, yeah, I think it's In.
Yeah. Somebody was thinking of Dickens instead of his actual spelling.
Yeah, and I only noticed that probably last year or the year before.
What was Fagan's career after that? Did you retire him, or did he run the next season, or what did he do in coursing?
We did run him. I think we ran him. I can't think what it was, but he broke a toe, and then we didn't really run him after that. That was it for him. We retired him. and he was used a little bit at stud.
How did he do? Did he produce good offspring?
His main one, I think, was one that Cliff Standing trained, and I can't even think of its name right now. But I think that was probably his best offspring. Yeah, I mean, he didn't have loads of bitches at all, but he had a few. We had quite a nice litter. To get him going at stud, we put him over a little track bitch that we had, and we kept a couple out of that litter, and we did it, okay with them. They won a couple of 8-dog stakes, I think. We had quite a lot of fun with them, and that was just, we used her just really to get him going at stud.
Did you have a farm at that time, or a house and a kennel, or what was your facility like when Fagan retired?
At that point, we were living in a sort of semi-detached with a very sort of large garden, so to speak. But we had sort of kenneling for about, I think about 12 dogs, something like that.
And then at some point, did Fagan come and live in the house?
He never came and lived in the house. He came with us up to Lincolnshire, obviously when we moved here, and he's actually buried out in the garden. But we tried him in the house, and he was a bit like not bothered about being in there. He was quite happy being in the kennel. Yeah.
How old did he live to be?
I think he lived to about 10, but he had a tumour that appeared on the underside of his tail, sort of right near his back end, and we weren't going to have him operated on or anything like that. And in the end, it got that it was it was in the wrong place, and it was quite painful. And so I think he was put down when he was about 10, 11, that sort of age. Yeah.
Well, he's a dog of a lifetime, wasn't he?
Oh gosh, yeah, he sure was. Yeah.
So you continued with your training and coursing through the 90s, I take it. Tell us a little bit about the experiences you had during that time.
Well, we decided to move up here to Lincolnshire because we could kind of get more for our money moving into this area at that time. So we found this place, which was ideal because we were starting to get a few owners, but we didn't really have the facilities where we were. So hence we decided to move. So we found this place, which we don't have any direct neighbours. It had a lovely barn, which was great to convert into kennels, and enough land to do what we needed to do. So we then sort of proceeded to get more owners. And so that really sort of took off when we moved here, really.
And that you continued with coursing exclusively?
We did after a while. We had about 6 track dogs, which were mainly our own. And, we sort of, we ran at Peterborough, and, as I say, we only had about 6, but, we had sort of probably about, 30, 40 coursing dogs at that time.
Mm-hmm. What was your training? How did the training regimen differ between the coursers and the racers that you had at that time? Did you condition them differently, feed them differently? What compare and contrast that for us a bit?
Not necessarily. Probably didn't feed them differently. Basically, the feeding was the same, but certainly because the coursing dogs had the off season off, so to speak, because obviously the coursing season ran from October till early March. And after that, the coursing dogs basically had the summer off, and we used to bring them back into work about sort of August time. So obviously the coursing dogs got unfit during that summertime. So we would start them off on walking, build the walking up, and then start introducing galloping, and then cut down on the walking, increase the fast work. And that's how we would get them fit. And then we would try to get, I was lucky enough to have some land where I could often get dogs a trial coursing. We'd walk up a hare before they actually went to a competition. So, that was always quite handy just to sort of get them, right for a competition.
Yeah, yeah. And did you go to the Waterloo, whether you had a dog entered or not, did you go to the Waterloo Cup pretty much every year through the 90s and early 2000s?
Only if we had dogs running. We had so many dogs at home that, we couldn't, just go for, leisure. We only went if we had dogs. And we did have dogs, that qualified, and we had a couple of owners that had nominations, but we never got anywhere close of winning it again.
What was the furthest any of those dogs advanced that you had in the Waterloo Cup? Semifinals, quarterfinals?
No, I don't think we even got there. I don't think we even got there. No.
Yeah. So
No.
Fagan was a hard record to break, wasn't he?
Oh, massive, yeah. And it soon brought us down to earth. It's not that easy to win.
And how did you do with your racers there? Peterborough was your closest track there in Lincolnshire, I guess, right?
Yeah, we had a couple of nice dogs, sort of top grade dogs that we did okay with. Yeah, I mean, they weren't really open dogs. They were on that sort of line of being top grade, but not quite open. So we did all right. It was that side of it was more at that stage was more like just a bit of a hobby, rather than, seriously doing it, so to speak.
So the racers tended to be your own dogs rather than greyhounds you had for owners that you were keeping
at that stage. Yeah, we did have sort of a couple of coursing friends that then had a dog with us, just for something for them to do during the summer months when the coursing dogs were off. But definitely, basically at that time, it was, as I say, it was only about 6 of them, and they were mainly ours.
Yeah. Now, when the coursing greyhounds were off in the off season, did you ever take any of them to the track just to let's see how they do?
No.
Could you do that? If you wanted to do that, could you do that under the regulations and the registrations that they have?
You could have done. They would have had to been registered with the NGRC as it was then, rather than the Greyhound Board of Great Britain. Yes, if they'd been registered with the NGRC, they would have been able to do it. But Peterborough was quite a tight track, to be fair, and the big old coursing dogs would have struggled around there. And also, as much as coursing dogs did their job on the field, they don't really stay well on the track, which is bizarre, but they don't. On the whole, you get the odd freak, of course you do, but no, even on a 400. I think Peterborough was 425 at that time. I can't remember, but yeah, they struggled to get that distance anyway. Or they'd run so wide, they'd be running on the grass, the other side of the hair rail.
So, Kim, as the challenges to coursing mounted as we got into 2000, 2001, et cetera, did you maintain that proportion of mostly coursing greyhounds and a few of your own racers, or did you begin to transition kind of your census of dogs between the two sports?
No, we didn't. We kept, as I say, the small amount of racing dogs, and the coursing numbers were kept up. Yeah, really right to the end of coursing, to be fair.
And at this point, had you gone into training full time, or did you have other employment that you would pursue in addition to the training business?
When we first moved to Lincolnshire, I was full time doing the dogs, and Russell was working. And then probably, I can't think when it was, but then there was a period that then we decided that because I was employing girls, staff, and I was being let down, and it was becoming difficult, and people wouldn't turn up, and then Russell said, right, that's it, we're going to do it together, and he stopped doing his job, and then we started doing the dogs together, and we did also have someone else helping as well, but that was a big transition, really, that when we both started to do the dogs.
Now, what was your routine when you were both training and during the coursing season? It's not just a weekend. There's more than just weekend meetings, aren't there?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, they were through the week. It was horses for courses. There were certain dogs that would go to certain meetings. Your better dogs were probably, Altcar, Yorkshire, East of England. There was sort of definitely horses for courses and places that would suit certain dogs. So, there was always that to be organised, so to speak. The coursing dogs also had a nice rest in between meetings because, that probably a club would run monthly meetings. But we were, because of the amount of clubs, we were probably coursing weekly. So it was a very intense time through the coursing season.
Yeah. Did you drive pretty much to anywhere in England, depending on, where the club was having a meeting and what dogs you had that were suitable for their courses and so forth?
Yeah, definitely all over. I mean, I have to say, where we are based, we were kind of in the middle of the country. So, we're not far from major routes. So, but yeah, you went where the meetings were, and that was it. We tried not to go the night before.
Yeah, were these typically one-day meetings, or were you staying overnight and not driving back and forth to home?
Yeah, there was meetings where we did stay overnight. Quite. Mainly the dogs, the vans were fitted out so the dogs could be in the vans overnight. They had enough room to be comfortable in the vans. It was only really at the Allcar that we would maybe stay in someone's yard with stables where the dogs could be kennelled, there. But on the whole, if we stayed overnight, the dogs were in the van.
Did you rent another caravan at any time?
No. Never again.
What was other than obviously the Waterloo Cup, what was your favorite club or favorite meeting during that time?
I think East of England was probably, and Newmarket were my favourite clubs, although the going at Newmarket was harsh, very flinty. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just awesome at Newmarket with the amount of hares. You could see them coming over the sort of horizon, and it was sort of amazing. And they had amazing meetings at Newmarket. But we did it East of England because, East of England is literally, or their coursing ground is literally 15 minutes from where I live now. Sadly, the A15 runs through a lot of it now, but I still drive that way, and always drive, think of the days out there, fabulous days.
What are the coursing fields there now? Are they crops, or what's become of the use of them?
They were always crops, always crops. It was a working farm. And then they built the A15 right through the middle of those coastland.
That had to break your heart.
Yeah, really. And it does. And in fact, my father now lives at Crowland, so I have to I go that way quite a bit. And I still can't get used to that road going through those wonderful fields.
Yeah. It just breaks your heart. What did you ever run with the Swaffham Club at the Anglia Cup?
Oh, yes. We won the Anglia Cup.
You did? Tell us about that.
That was with a dog called Lackabain Gooch. Probably the fastest dog that we ever trained. But he could not do an ounce of work. He was, after that first turn, that was it. He was done. But he could lead a dog, lengths on that run up.
Yeah.
We had another wonderful bitch in that meeting, and she, can't think of her name. She met him, I think, in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals, and she killed to lose. But she, in my mind, would have been the worthy winner of the Anglia Cup. And her owners were fabulous coursing people, and I would have loved them to have won it, really.
Yeah. I can remember some folks at the Waterloo Cup who were Swaffham Club members bragging about the strength of the hares there in their area. Do you agree with that? Did they have some of the strongest and most populous hares?
I don't know if the hares were any stronger. I mean, they always say, there's nothing like a fen hare. Here where I live, we have an abundance of hares, and we can walk out the door and see hares. And I think it's the nature of the land, or really, in the Anglia Cup, you had tough coursing. Do you know what I mean? Hard coursing. On whatever field you were on, it wasn't grass, the Withens. So it was tougher, I guess, really, for the dogs, because they were on different terrain.
Yeah, I can remember I had the good fortune to go to a couple of Anglia Cups over the years, and they were running on plow quite a bit, as I recall.
Oh, yeah, you could get anything. Yeah. Whereas obviously the Withens, everything was grass, so that's much kinder, and not so hard for the dogs. But Anglia Cup was roots coursing, and that was that.
Yeah, exactly. So we get toward 2000, the terrible year of 2005, when the Hunting Act was passed and so forth, and I'm sure you saw the writing on the wall. What did you start to do to stay in greyhounds, but deal with the fact that coursing was going to go away?
I think obviously we had to come to terms that it was going to go, although I don't think it really hit us until that last Waterloo, when we realised this is the last Waterloo. And I think we all, it was desperately sad, desperate.
Yeah.
Because that was it. And the dogs obviously started to disappear. They went to rehoming, home to their owners or whatever. And, that was real. And it was just gone. That was the end of.
Did you run a dog? Did you have a dog to run in the 2005 Waterloo Cup, or did you just go to attend and be there for the end?
No, we did have runners. I can't remember how many, but we weren't anywhere near finals or anything, but we were there. Yeah, and it was desperately sad. Yeah, and that was it. Gone.
Yeah, that was that. I was there, and I'm an American, and I didn't have the tradition of it all, in my
Yeah.
background, and even I, felt
Mm.
just terrible,
It was
the way
awful.
that
Yeah.
it had ended and so forth. So we
Yeah.
move on from there, and what did you do then at that point? Did you just say, "Well, I'm just going to be a racing trainer, and I'm going to stay full time in it"?
Well, we had a few races. I mean, literally a handful of races. But then I was approached by the Retired Greyhound Trust. They had some dogs that they needed to get out of a situation, and they'd somehow got to know that I had kennel space. So they asked me if I could take these dogs. There was 13 dogs. So I actually worked for the Retired Greyhound Trust for a couple of years. I was like a holding kennel. Dogs came to me that needed to leave wherever the situation they were in. And before they went to an actual rehoming kennel. So, that was interesting. But still
Were
at
these
that
dogs that
time,
were they in poor physical shape that you had to kind of do a little rehab, or did they just need a good place to stay until they went to a rehoming center?
some weren't in great shape. There was a couple of incidences I actually had to do a report on some because they'd come from somewhere and I had to, they're in appalling condition. Racing dogs. But on the whole, they were dogs just making the transition from ending their racing career, needed somewhere to go before they went to a rehoming kennel.
Yeah. And what was your regimen for them? Did they have an exercise regimen where you would turn them out in your paddocks and so forth?
Yeah, we did. We would walk them. They would go out in our paddocks. They still needed a quality of life, and also to get to know the dogs. We would spay or do the neutering and that side of it, and assess them as much as we could. So it was quite good to do different things with them. Before they went on, so you could give a rehoming kennel a good idea of what they were taking on and what sort of
Mm-hmm.
home they needed.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that couple of years where you were providing the kenneling, did you take up racing full time?
No, what happened was they Retired Greyhound Trust, as they were then decided that they weren't needing holding kennels anymore. So when that came to an end, I didn't have any track dogs then because during that time, me and Russ are divorced. So I stayed here, and I actually gave up dogs for a while because after the RGT took the dogs away, I thought, well, I'm never going to have this number of dogs again. So I knocked the kennels down in the barn. And I thought, well, I won't be in dogs again. And then somebody approached me to rent I've got another block, a smaller block of kennels. Someone approached me, a racing trainer, who was having to move out of their property and asked if he could stay here temporarily. And that really got me back into the racing dog. I thought, well, I could probably do this. So, and in the meantime, I'd met Dan. And so Dan organised having the kennels rebuilt. Not as many. We only have 10 kennels in the main barn now. And just started training again.
And Dan's also a photographer who takes some fairly fabulous pictures.
Yeah, he does, which I was really lucky then. He was an army photographer. He's no longer in the army. Yeah, so I get fabulous pictures of my dogs too.
Well, we should digress at this point and make full disclosure that our Greyhound Nation podcast mascot logo was a dog you trained that Dan took some fabulous pictures of. We were so taken by them that we asked Dan if we could use them, and they're on our logo, and that was Florence. Tell us about Florence.
Well, Florence, I loved Florence. She was such a character. She was bred by Dilly Steele and Richard Devonish, and we bought her as a 12-week-old pup, and we reared her. And she showed lots of promise at the beginning of her career, but then it was evident that she was a very short runner. And so we sprinted her. And she wasn't an out and out sprinter. She was really a 4-bend dog that couldn't get 4 bends, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So she wasn't a true sprinter, but we had no option than to sprint her. And she won, a few races sprinting and a couple of opens, I think. And we had a lot of fun with her. She sustained a minor wrist injury, which was going to reoccur. So we decided to retire her.
And where is she living now?
She's got a fabulous home with a family. And she's ruling the roost, as she would, because she was a princess.
I've noticed on Facebook that you seem to do a lot of direct rehoming. Is that still the case?
I do. Rehoming is in crisis here.
Yeah.
It's I think after COVID or during COVID, homes were there, but rehoming is difficult at the moment. There's a lot of trainers that have a lot of dogs waiting to go into rehoming, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
It is. So I do try and rehome as much as I can myself. You have to go through, it's so important that you go through home checking and the full procedure, and, we always say that if they're not happy with the dog, that the dog comes directly back to us. Whatever dog, they will, if we've rehomed them, they would always come back here if needed.
Yeah. Well, that's a great policy to have, I can tell you. You trained another dog we should mention again on the full disclosure, named Oliver Jackson, who now lives
Oliver
with
Jackson,
me.
Yeah.
Tell us, and I believe he was the first dog of your relationship, owner-trainer relationship with George Sell, wasn't he?
Yes. Although I knew George through the Whippets, and that's how Ollie came along. George had another dog to begin with, and then he bought Oliver. Yeah, super little dog.
Yeah, well, tell us about Oliver's racing career and what he was like around the kennel. This is my one chance to ask you about this, so I'm going to ask you about Oliver.
Well, it was an exciting time, really, because that's when I first came back, really, decided to come back. So Oliver really was a little superstar for us at that time, because he was just going through the grades, winning races, and he was such a gutsy little dog round Peterborough. It really suited him. And, he was very brave round Peterborough. He threw himself around those bends.
He was a little guy, 62 pounds,
Yeah,
And as George told me, he said he would run through a brick wall to get to the lead, you know.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
Dan got some great. I've got some great pictures, and I can't remember whether you sent them or George sent them, but with two dogs sandwiching in Oliver, you know, just
Yeah,
racing is rubbing, as they say, and he's just
yeah,
powering through. He doesn't
yeah.
care whether they're bumping him or not, you know.
No, he had no fear. He was one of those with no self-preservation. It's I'm coming through, and that's it.
Now you were
Yeah.
racing at Peterborough, and they closed, right? What,
Yes,
about a
yes.
year,
That
2 years
that was
ago?
a result.
What happened to Peterborough? Why did Peterborough close?
It was a result of COVID, I think. Although, we often think there was maybe more in the background going on that anyone knew about. But it was definitely after COVID that it all seemed to come to a very abrupt end. We had actually moved on just before it closed. We'd gone to Henlow,
Mm-hmm.
and we were quite thankful that we'd done that, because obviously one day they were running and literally people saw it on social media that, oh, we've shut, and that was that.
Wow. Has this facility been sold, or is there some possibility that it could come back at some point?
It has been sold. The track is no longer there. It's tarmac there. There's lorries parked on it. The stadium itself is still there, and it's such a waste. It could have been, if someone had took it on and just improved the actual track, because you could have made that into a 500-meter track because there was room enough. It would have been
Yeah.
Derby material there with the
Yeah,
facilities for
that's
the
a
public.
shame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
real shame.
What about Henlow? How far is that from you?
Henlow is about an hour and 20 minutes for us, and we were there for a while, but Henlow is hanging in the balance also at the moment, because of the leasehold and what have we. So we then left Henlow. We went to Nottingham. We were at Nottingham for about a year, and we got a few injuries at Nottingham. We didn't get on with Nottingham very well, and so now we're at Towcester.
How far that seems to be a premier track, just from looking at the pictures of the facility. It appears to be a really first class place. Do the pictures tell the truth, or or do you just see the best pictures?
No, it's a lovely track. It's a stiff 500. You need strong runners there, and yeah, the facilities are good there. You know, we're enjoying it at Toaster, I have to say.
Now you're doing a little breeding as well, right?
Yeah, we started breeding probably in 19 again. I used to breed a few coursing dogs before then, and I thought, well, I'm never going to breed anymore. But then off we went and started again.
I always look for your puppy pictures on your Facebook page. It's always good to see
Oh
those
yeah,
puppies. It's hard to resist puppies, isn't it?
it sure is. Yeah, yeah. I always think that's it, no more. And you have some more.
The memory fades of the labor of raising them, and how,
Yeah,
having
that's
all
right.
of them at your feet and so forth, and then you think, oh, I miss having those
Yeah,
puppies.
yeah,
So
definitely.
what does the future hold for Kim Gooding as far as the Greyhound world? What, are you going to keep on keeping on?
Well, we have a
Any
litter on the
retirement
ground.
thoughts?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have got thoughts of that. We have a litter on the ground at the moment. They are coming up to 12 weeks, so we've got them to look forward to next year.
Yeah.
They're out of a bitch that we bred by Dorato's Wildcat, so we're looking forward to them. we are possibly thinking that will be our last litter. We feel the rehoming is a problem, and we personally can't see it getting any better. So we're thinking we are cutting down on our dogs, to be fair.
Well, there may be some good news in that regard. I'm hearing some rumblings of a possible rehoming arrangement between the UK and the US, just similar to what we've got with the Irish program and the Australian program. So we still got a high demand for them over here. Now, groups don't have as many applications as they had during COVID. That seemed to have been a spike for everybody. People were home. They said that's a good time to get a dog. But and there has been somewhat of a drop, but the demand still remains pretty strong over here. So maybe we can, in the U.S., can help out the situation in the U.K. a bit.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous.
Do you have any superstars right now that you'd like to tell us about? Who's your best greyhound?
Sadly, we lost our superstar fairly recently. We didn't lose him; he's here in the house. But Shockwave Onyx has been a fabulous dog for us, but he unfortunately broke his hock. It wasn't a bad break, and we could possibly have bought him back, but he's 4 in December, and we've had tremendous fun with him. So we decided to call it a day with him. But, that whole litter, really, that was our first litter of not having a litter for years. And they've all won opens, and they've just been a great, fun litter. We kept the whole litter. And they were amazing.
We should give a plug to your kennel name, Shockwave. Tell us how that came about.
Well, that was Russell, really, because Russell is a welder, and he was working in a boatyard years ago, and there was a boat called Shockwave. So that is where it came from, the name of a boat.
and it goes back to your coursing days, doesn't it?
Yeah. All our coursing dogs, definitely.
And do you tend to name the dogs of your own breeding Shockwave this, Shockwave that?
Yeah, all our own dogs are Shockwaves. Anything that we buy in, like a Swift from Ian Greaves or whatever, they all keep their names. We don't change names with dogs that come in or are bought in.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, we're going to keep looking for the Shockwave dogs on the race replays and so forth. And you've had a great run in greyhounds, and I hope you'll keep staying in the breed. We need folks like you to keep the faith in the breed and so forth. So thanks for all you've done for our breed all these many years, and all the great memories you've created for, I'm sure, so many owners.
Thank you.
Well, Kim, it's thanks for spending some time with us. We're going to let your supper's waiting on you, I believe. We're going to let you go eat supper, and we really appreciate your remembering the great times that you had with so many greyhounds.
Yeah, I miss those coursing days for sure.
Well, folks, join us again next time. This has been Greyhound Nation, and we look forward to seeing you for this and other episodes.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you're not a regular listener, be sure to follow Greyhound Nation wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Grey Nation Show, follow us, and you'll get notifications every time we release a new episode. You can also get new show notifications when you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you liked the episode, leave us a review on our Facebook page or your favorite podcast app. You can also send us feedback or questions via the contact form on our website at greyhoundnation.dog. That's greyhoundnation.dog. This episode was produced in collaboration with host John Parker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Dimitri Taras. Thanks to our guest this episode, Kim Gooding. If you happen to have a copy of Charlie Blanning's book, 22 Waterloo Cups, you can read all about React Fagan, the 1989 winner of the Waterloo Cup. I'm Michael Burns, and you've been listening to Greyhound Nation.